Ever wondered what unseen dramas unfolded in Cold War shadows? These 24 pre-1990 spy thrillers plunge you into a world of double agents, nuclear brinkmanship, and moral ambiguity. From Berlin's divided streets to subterranean bunkers, each film reveals the high stakes of espionage. Strap in for a pulse-pounding journey through history's most covert conflicts and uncover missions that defined eras. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, 1965. In the grim mid-1960s, John le Carré's searing novel leapt to the screen, and Richard Burton's world-weary agent, Alec Leamas, became the face of moral ambiguity in espionage. Set against the bleak backdrop of divided Berlin, we follow Leamas as he undertakes a final, suicidal mission to pose as a disgraced double agent and sow chaos within East German intelligence. But nothing is as it seems. Every move carries hidden agendas, and every ally may be an enemy in disguise. The film's muted palette and unflinching realism shattered the glamour of spycraft and showed viewers the true human cost of Cold War skullduggery. As tensions mount and Leamas edges closer to his own destruction, we're left questioning the thin line between hero and pawn, and whether any victory in this shadow war is worth the price. The Manchurian Candidate, 1962. Imagine a world where the ultimate betrayal isn't a stolen secret, but a stolen mind. In this taut thriller, Frank Sinatra leads a squad of Korean War POWs who return home as decorated heroes, only to discover one of their own, Raymond Shaw, has been brainwashed into a living weapon. With his memories erased and loyalty rewired, Shaw becomes a sleeper agent in a sinister political conspiracy. As his stepmother maneuvers behind the scenes, the film unravels into a chilling meditation on paranoia, power, and the fragility of free will. Director John Frankenheimer's razor-sharp editing and unsettling score heighten the suspense, culminating in one of cinema's most iconic final shots. Here, trust becomes the deadliest commodity, and the battlefield extends into the battleground of the mind. The Ipcress File, 1965. Cold War thrillers rarely get as cool and claustrophobic as this British gem. Michael Caine stars as Major Harry Palmer, a cynical working-class spy reluctantly drawn into a convoluted plot involving abducted scientists and a mysterious brainwashing process. Filmed in drab London flats and sterile labs, the movie's grainy textures and unconventional camera angles underscore the everyday drudgery of espionage, far from the champagne-soaked glamour of Bond. When Palmer infiltrates a covert facility known as the Ipcress File, he uncovers a web of deceit where identities are manufactured and loyalties dissolved. His weary sarcasm and battered trench coat become our entry point into a world where knowledge is the deadliest weapon. By the end, we're left pondering whether breaking someone's mind is the ultimate act of war, and who's really in control. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, 1979. Adapted from another Le Carré masterpiece, this slow-burn procedural trades car chases for quiet dread. In London's labyrinthine MMY6 headquarters, veteran spymaster George Smiley is summoned from retirement to root out a Soviet mole at the very apex of the service. As Smiley methodically peels back layers of deception, interviewing old colleagues, poring over cryptic secrets, and navigating shifting alliances, we're drawn into a cerebral cat-and-mouse game. The film's muted tones and deliberate pacing mirror the lethargy of a bureaucracy riddled with betrayal where every whisper could topple governments. By the denouement, Smiley's unassuming persistence reveals that the greatest threat in espionage isn't a foreign enemy, but the rot within your own ranks. 3 Days of the Condor, 1975. When bookish CIA analyst Joe Turner returns from lunch to find his entire office slaughtered, the safe, orderly world of desk-bound spycraft explodes into a desperate fight for survival. Over 72 brutal hours, Turner scrambles across Manhattan's mean streets, hunted by his own agency, framed as a traitor, and forced to question every patriotic assumption he once held dear. Director Sidney Pollack uses the cityscape as both refuge and trap, turning familiar landmarks into claustrophobic battlegrounds. As Turner unearths a conspiracy that stretches to the agency's highest echelons, the film asks, how many innocent people must die to secure the nation's secrets? With razor-sharp dialogue and a mounting sense of dread, Condor remains a timeless warning that knowledge in the wrong hands can topple empires. Marathon Man, 1976. When history professor Thomas Babe Levy takes on a research trip for his brother, he stumbles into a world more terrifying than any campus lecture. Marathon Man catapults us from dusty lecture halls into the shadowy recesses of a Nazi-era conspiracy. Stolen diamonds, war crime hunters, and the ghost of Dr. Christian Sell, a dentist-turned-torturer with a penchant for extracting information and teeth at speed. As Babe endures a brutal interrogation while chained in a dimly lit apartment, the film's heartbeat drums alongside his fear, every corroded pipette and whispered confession ratcheting tension to a breaking point. Director John Schlesinger uses quick cuts and close-ups to trap us in Babe's panicked world, where knowledge of a family secret becomes his only lifeline. By the time Babe learns the truth about his brother's covert life, we're left reeling. When you run toward the finish line, who's waiting with the scalpel? The Kremlin Letter, 1970. In the heart of Cold War's intricate spy chessboard, the Kremlin Letter assembles a rogues gallery of intelligence operatives, Americans, Russians, and everyone in between, tasked with retrieving a cryptic missive that could topple governments. Robert Aldrich's ensemble thriller unfolds in smoke-filled cafes, secluded mansions, and the glacial expanse of Finland, each locale steeped in paranoia. We follow Danny Roman, a disillusioned American agent drawn back into service by promises of cold, hard cash. As he navigates double crosses, seductions, and coded messages hidden in custom-designed typewriters, the film weaves a tapestry of moral ambiguity. Who can you trust when every allegiance conceals another agenda? Bloodshed erupts amid whispered negotiations, and alliances shatter in the flicker of a silenced pistol. By the final frame, the Kremlin Letter forces us to confront the sobering truth. In espionage, information is currency, and betrayal pays the highest dividends. The Quiller Memorandum, 1966. Imagine being the sole hope to avert a neo-Nazi resurgence in a city still scarred by war. That's the burden on Quiller, an inscrutable American agent sent to Berlin to dismantle a secretive organization rebuilding its ranks. As he follows leads through Berlin's haunting ruins, bombed-out churches, abandoned factories, and shadowy underground clubs, every new clue deepens the mystery. Amid coded messages scribbled in hotel rooms and clandestine meetings beneath crumbling arches, Quiller's only ally is a mysterious contact known only as Monica. Director Michael Anderson drapes the film in black and white noir, turning Berlin into a character itself, a wounded city whispering of old evils and fresh dangers. When the final revelation erupts in a chilling showdown on the city's outskirts, we're reminded that history's darkest chapters can bleed into the present, and that vigilance is the price of freedom. The Odessa File, 1974. Based on Frederick Forsyth's international bestseller, The Odessa File follows young journalist Peter Miller as he uncovers a clandestine network of former SS officers and a plot to resurrect the Third Reich. Miller's quest begins with the suicide of a Holocaust survivor, whose dying words unlock a labyrinth of documents pointing to Odessa, a shadowy cabal protecting war criminals. Racing across Hamburg, Vienna, and the Swiss Alps, Miller risks everything to expose those who thought they'd escaped justice. Taut pacing and razor-sharp editing transform Europe's serene countryside into a hunting ground where every train station and country house could hold a hidden cell. As Miller inches closer to the conspiracy's heart, The film confronts us with a stark question. When evil survives behind new identities, how far will one man go to bring it down? The Day of the Jackal, 1973. What if an anonymous assassin almost brought a government to its knees? The Day of the Jackal dramatizes the calculated precision of the jackal, a mysterious freelance killer hired by dissidents to eliminate French President Charles de Gaulle. Under director Fred Zinnemann's meticulous eye, the film becomes a study in procedural tension. We watch the assassin obtain forged passports, commission a sniper rifle disguised as an umbrella, and meticulously map the streets of Paris. Meanwhile, a dogged detective pieces together the plot through telegrams and bank transfers, each subtle clue amplifying the stakes. With every ticking clock and surreptitious handoff, we're drawn into a deadly duel of wits, where a single misstep could thwart the assassination, or doom an entire nation. In the end, the Day of the Jackal reminds us that in the silent war of espionage, patience can be the most lethal weapon. From Russia with Love, 1963. What happens when the Cold War becomes a high-stakes game of seduction and betrayal? In From Russia with Love, Agent 007 finds himself ensnared in a plot more elaborate than any before. A Soviet cipher machine and the beautiful Tatiana Romanova are bait for a raid on MI6 secrets. Filmed across Istanbul's winding bazaars and shadowy waterways, the movie captures the exotic tension of East versus West. As Bond navigates a maze of hidden informants, poisoned drinks, and deadly assassins, the line between ally and adversary blurs with every coded message. Director Terrence Young balances sleek action with intricate spycraft, train rides shrouded in suspicion, hand-to-hand fights in opulent palaces, and a finale aboard the Orient Express that keeps viewers guessing until the whistle blows. By the end, we're reminded that in espionage, the deadliest weapons aren't guns, but secrets, and trust is the rarest currency of all. Goldfinger, 1964. Can a man's obsession with gold topple global security? Goldfinger thrusts James Bond into a battle against Auric Goldfinger, a megalomaniac whose plan to irradiate Fort Knox threatens the entire Western financial system. Shot in the neon glare of Miami and the historic grandeur of Switzerland, the film sizzles with high-octane chases, fury on the golf course, Aston Martin car chases across mountain passes, and gadgets that became legendary. But it's the psychological duel, Bond's ice-cold wit versus Goldfinger's glittering madness, that hooks us. As Bond infiltrates the villain's steel vault and confronts deadly henchman Oddjob, director Guy Hamilton underlines a simple truth. Greed is a weapon, and those who wield it can hold the world ransom. With each explosive twist, Goldfinger set the gold standard for spy cinema, proving that glamour and grit can coexist in the ultimate Cold War showdown. North by Northwest, 1959. How far would you run to prove you're not the killer? Hitchcock's North by Northwest transforms mistaken identity into a globe-trotting manhunt. Advertising executive Roger Thornhill is abducted, accused of espionage, and chased through Chicago streets, Mount Rushmore, and a crop duster's dusty fields. No high-tech gadgetry here, only Thornhill's wits and a growing paranoia that anyone might be a Soviet agent in disguise. Hitchcock's camera makes the ordinary uncanny. A cornfield becomes a killing field, a landmark, a labyrinth of fear. As Thornhill races to clear his name and protect the kidnapped daughter of a murdered spy, the film pulses with mounting suspense and dark humor. In the end, Thornhill learns that innocence can be the deadliest disguise of all, and that escape, once it begins, hinges on the thin thread between survival and oblivion. The Bedford Incident, 1965. What happens when nerves of steel collide under the Arctic ice? The Bedford Incident casts Richard Widmark as Captain Eric Finch, commander of the USS Bedford, and Sidney Poitier as his newly assigned executive officer. Tasked with tailing a Soviet sub beneath the frozen expanse, Finch becomes obsessed with provoking his adversary into surfacing, ignoring orders, risking a full-scale nuclear exchange. Filmed in stark black and white, the movie's icy vistas and claustrophobic bridge scenes heighten the palpable dread of brinkmanship. As sonar pings echo through the hull, we witness not just a naval cat and mouse, but a moral descent. How far does one officer go when his country's fate hangs in the balance? By the final shattering moment atop the Arctic ice, the Bedford incident leaves us questioning whether discipline and duty can survive when paranoia steers the wheel. Ice Station Zebra, 1968. Can a remote Arctic research station hide the key to global domination? In Ice Station Zebra, Rock Hudson leads a perilous mission to rescue a British scientist from a besieged facility at the North Pole, only to uncover a plot to steal high-resolution reconnaissance films revealing Soviet missile sites. Shot amid actual ice floes and aboard clanking submarines, the film immerses us in a world where frostbite is as lethal as a torpedo. Director John Sturges weaves political intrigue with claustrophobic tension, fistfights in sub-corridors, silent surveillance through periscopes, and a final sprint across shifting ice packs as Soviet forces close in. With every gasp of frigid air and every coded radio transmission, Ice Station Zebra reminds us that in the Cold War, the smallest outpost can become the stage for humanity's largest conflicts. Funeral in Berlin, 1966. Berlin's icy alleyways hide more than the scars of war in Funeral in Berlin, where Michael Caine's Harry Palmer returns to the fractured cityscape for a daring defection. Under cover of a funeral procession, Palmer must shepherd Colonel Stock, a Soviet nuclear scientist, across the Berlin Wall while dodging KGB assassins and double-crossing Western handlers. Director Guy Hamilton leans into the city's split personality. Smoky jazz clubs in West Berlin give way to stark, watchtower-lined checkpoints in the east. Every whispered conversation over chipped porcelain teacups and every coded signal in a funeral wreath underscores how death itself becomes a bargaining chip in the espionage game. As Palmer navigates a maze of false identities and shifting loyalties, we feel the weight of every choice. In Cold War Berlin, even mourning the dead can be a matter of life and death. The Looking-Glass War, 1969. In The Looking-Glass War, adapted from John le Carré's novel, the glamour of spycraft gives way to bureaucratic rot and human error. British intelligence, desperate for a coup against East Germany, sends Agent Fred Leiser into a minefield of half-baked plans and undertrained operatives. Filmed in drab Leipzig streets and gloomy safehouses, the movie unspools like a cautionary tale. Brilliant strategies miscarry when ambition outpaces honesty, and every cover story fracture exposes agents to mortal peril. Director Frank Pearson paints the agency not as sleek operators, but as desk-bound analysts whose cold calculations lack moral clarity. When the mission implodes, Leiser's fate reminds us that in the Shadow War, the real casualties are often the ones left uncounted. Telefon, Tyson, Essiv, Hundre, Og Citisiv. What if dormant spies could be reactivated with a single phone call? Telefon puts that chilling premise into motion as Charles Bronson's CIA operative, Ned Weintraub, races against time to stop a network of Soviet sleeper agents across America. Each agent, plucked from 1950s innocence, is programmed with post-hypnotic triggers that, once spoken, turn suburban housewives and factory workers into lethal assets. Director Don Siegel cranks up the tension through cross-country chases. From Chicago's neon bustle to Alaska's snowbound wilderness, Weintraub hunts the final call that could ignite global catastrophe. With every intercepted telegram and every burst of static on the line, Telefon warns how whispers in the right ear can resurrect Cold War demons decades after the fact. Hopscotch, 1980. In a witty twist on traditional spy fare, Hopscotch sends rogue CIA case officer Miles Kendig on a globe-trotting revenge tour against his own agency. After penning a tell-all memoir, Kendig mails chapter by chapter to newspapers worldwide, forcing bureaucrats into a frantic game of cat and mouse. Director Ronald Neame infuses the chase, from London's foggy embankments to the Swiss Alps, with sardonic humor, turning spycraft into high-stakes slapstick. Yet beneath the laughs lies a sharper critique. When espionage becomes a battle of egos, the line between patriot and pariah blurs. Each ruse, decoy trains, coded postcards, even a stolen taxi, reminds us that in Cold War politics, the most dangerous weapon can be a well-timed punchline. The Falcon and the Snowman, 1985. Based on a notorious true story, The Falcon and the Snowman chronicles the descent of two idealistic young Americans, Christopher Boyce and Dalton Lee, into espionage for the KGB. Boyce, disillusioned by covert operations he deems unethical, recruits his charismatic friend Lee to sell classified satellite intelligence in exchange for cash and cocaine. Director John Schlesinger shadows their transformation from bright-eyed patriots to fugitives, using Los Angeles' sun-bleached streets and Mexico's shadowy border towns as stark backdrops to their moral unraveling. With every clandestine exchange of microfilm and every risk-soaked rendezvous, the film forces us to confront a haunting question. When loyalty to country falters, how far will someone go to follow their conscience, and at what cost? The Fourth Protocol, 1987. What if a single unsuspicious package could trigger nuclear catastrophe? In The Fourth Protocol, MI5 analyst John Preston uncovers a seemingly innocuous crate destined for Heathrow, only to realize it contains the components of Britain's first homemade nuclear bomb. Across snowy European countrysides and bustling London streets, Preston races to intercept Soviet agent Valery Petrovsky, whose mission is encoded in an obscure Cold War treaty clause. Director John Mackenzie layers bureaucratic tension over ticking clock suspense as we watch Preston navigate shadowy embassy archives, decode encrypted messages, and outwit double agents. Every passport stamp and dead-drop exchange deepens the intrigue, reminding us that in espionage, the smallest details can reshape world history. By the final showdown beneath a London airport's concrete runway, the Fourth Protocol lays bare the monumental stakes of clandestine pacts and the heroes who risk everything to uphold them. The Deadly Affair, 1967. Can betrayal wear the face of a trusted friend? The Deadly Affair immerses us in a world of faded glamour and hidden agendas when MI6 operative Charles Dobbs suspects colleague Samuel Fenton of treason. Filmed in languid, autumnal London settings, leaf-strewn squares, fog-draped bridges, the movie feels like a whispered confession of Cold War paranoia. Director Sidney Lumet's obsession with personal detail, lingering shots of whiskey glasses, crumpled cigarette packs, reflects Dobbs's unraveling psyche as he chases clues through smoky jazz clubs and derelict mansions. With every coded phone call and clandestine rendezvous, suspicion tightens like a noose. As Dobbs confronts the heartbreaking truth behind loyalty and love, The Deadly Affair reminds us that in the shadow world of spies, the greatest threats often come from within, and the price of truth can be devastating. From gritty realism to high-octane spectacle, these films remind us that espionage isn't just action, it's a psychological battleground. Dive into these timeless Cold War narratives to witness courage, betrayal, and the price of secrets. Subscribe, explore hidden chapters of history.